Well, good morning out there in Merrimac TV land. My name is Leo Jubert, and I'm with some friends of mine, and we're going to talk about going down memory lane with a subject that's near to each one of us. On my left, I'd like to introduce, on the far left is Thelma Gibbs. Next to me, I have Netta Starbird. To my immediate right, Jim Smith, and next to Jim is Bruce
My
Bridges.
friends call me Bruce Bridges.
Bruce Bridges. Well, the reason I got fumbled there because your brother and your father were definitely connected to some of these shows that we did. And we started out, this show was sponsored by the Merrimac Santa Parade Committee, and it was annually in the spring. And the shows went on from 1967 to 2004. Those first 2 years, Bruce, maybe you could address this. Your dad ran the shows and was the director. Could you just, talk a little bit about your dad's shows, especially those first 2 years?
Yes. Dad had a history in the Merrimack Valley of being a director and a performer in the Minstel shows over his career, which lasted until 1968. Anytime there was a charity, an organization that needed financial help, he'd gather some of the people that he did shows with and other people that were local that would participate and provide some talent.
Yeah. Now, those first 2 years, the shows were sponsored by the Merrimac Santa Committee. Jim, you were in those first two shows with Ed. What brings back some memories of those first two shows that you can think of?
It was a smaller group at the time. I can remember meeting into the Merrimac fire station at the port, which was the Santa Parade Committee members. With Ed, he knew what he wanted. He knew how to get it. We were all willing to do, to participate. It was just a fun time. You can't even begin to explain to the kids today what it was like to be a live show. It was just amazing. Ed, he was just a wonderful man. He knew what he wanted. He knew how to get there, and we were all willing to put the time in. And it was just a fun time. It was amazingly fun.
And I would have to, and not just because you're here, Bruce, but your dad had a fine singing voice too. He had a very mellow voice. Netta, maybe you could explain the concept of the minstrel show to some, especially like Jimmy said, some of these younger people might not be aware of what a minstrel show was.
Oh, gee, well, it was just a lot of local talent. None of us were superstars, but...
We weren't?
Hey, stupid.
That's not fair.
But I don't know how to explain what you want.
Well, maybe the fact that there was, because it was based around a chorus.
Yeah.
Then there was the interlocutor.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
Mr. Andrews.
That would be the person who's like an MC.
The MC.
And
Mr.
explain the ends. What
Oh,
the
the
ends.
N men. They were just awesome. And they would always have a tambourine routine. And if you didn't see that, oh, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, they were called the N-men because they
N-men.
sat on the
They
end
sat
of
on
the
the
chorus.
ends and faced each other, and they all had their own little bit to do. And then they'd have an act together as N-men with the tambourines.
Thelma, were you in any of the shows that Ed Bridges did, or when did you start in the
I
shows?
just barely started. I think I was only in one show with him, and then that was when rehearsals were at the town hall, the old town hall.
Yeah.
And that was my first introduction to it. And after that, it went to Leo mostly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, I started my shows, the first one in 1969, and I had a background of doing musical reviews. So I did a couple of musical reviews the first 2 years, and then I decided that maybe a lot of people enjoyed the concept of the minstrel show. So then what we did was alternate. 1 year we did a minstrel show, 1 year
That's
we
right,
did
I
a
remember that.
musical review. I favored the musical review because you could get more people involved. It was a little more difficult because in the musical review you closed the curtain and people, 40, 50 people running off stage and trying to find their spot. And so let's talk a little bit, some of the shows that you remember, Bruce. Maybe you could allude to any specific show that you can remember that stands out in your mind.
Well, taking Dad's record of 1948 on up to 68, he had many different shows. Most were involving local people, but he had a nucleus of people that could sing, or they could dance, they could drum, play the piano well, and that was his basis. And he always thought that the people that he got to get into the chorus, that was the backbone of the show. They would sit in back of the end men.
Yeah.
They would back up the songs that the end men would sing. There'd be an opening, or maybe a medley of 3 or 4 songs, a closing for the first half, an opening for the second half, and then a grand closing. He liked humor, and he got people like Jimmy and Thelma and Netta to fill that part of the performance.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Certainly the comedy role in any amateur show is very important, and we were lucky to have some, especially somebody like you said, Jimmy and Thelma later on came into it. We had Eddie Madden telling Irish jokes.
Eddie and Brian
Brian
dancing.
Peavy. We did a number of comedy skits. Jimmy, what's some of the shows that you were involved in stick out maybe as a little memorable? Any that you can think of?
Yeah, I'm probably going to need tissues. I can remember the time that most of the inmen, we would build our own skits, our own props and such. And I had built an outhouse. And in this skit, my name was Stupid, and I was the janitor of the show. So whatever they needed to be fixed and such, I would do that. So I would be sitting in the outhouse, and Liz would be down on the main floor playing the piano. And Leo said to me, when Wayne calls you, you come out of the outhouse, but you want a little explosion. So I took a paper bag. Leo's idea was take a paper bag, put some powder in it, talcum powder, and at the cue of Wayne saying, "Hey, Stupid, where are you?" I would break the bag, push the door open, and come out of the fog. Well, the first night it was pretty good, but I thought I could do a better job. So I ended up with a metal bucket with powder and paper in there, and I took an M80 firecracker, and when Wayne says, "Hey, Stupid," he said it 3 times. Well, it took the wick to light a little bit, so I lit it, and in the outhouse, I stood back and waited for that bomb to go off. Well, when it did, it blew the door off the outhouse, landed on Liz's piano, and I came out and I couldn't hear a thing. So Wayne kept on giving me my lines, and I said, "I can't hear you. I don't know what you're saying." It was just a fun time. And one quick story is I was in New York City, and my stage name was Hey Stupid, and I kind of had fun with people in town about it. But when I was in New York, I was on an escalator, and I was going down, and some local kid bumped into my arm, and he gave me a dirty look. And as he got to the top of the escalator, he turned around and says, "Hey, Stupid." I said, "I'm famous." they know me in New York. So those are some of the things that I just remember and I tell often because it was just so much fun. It was just a lot of fun. I just really enjoyed that.
Well, a good comedian is anything but stupid, I'll say that. They have to be quite clever, believe me.
Right.
Thelma, I'm going to skip over.
Yeah.
So what sticks out in your mind as some of the shows,
Well-
just 2 or 3 shows that stick to your mind?
Well, there's really a number of them because I'm very grateful to Leo because Leo, from the first time I joined the chorus, he knew I couldn't sing. He knew I was opening and closing my mouth, but he knew I couldn't sing. And he would graciously write a skit for me every year that I could follow and had fun with. And a couple of them I know in particular,
it's
he
fun.
always seemed to get me in trouble too. Like one of them was to fall in the well. Now, I'm not a young chick when I was doing this, and I had to keep practicing. So I looked right when I went to the well head first. So, but there was a wooden board of the where the well was, And in practicing, the time the show went off, my legs were black and blue from trying to let myself go and go into the well head first. And I have one picture of where I was upside down in the well with my legs sticking up. And another year, he had me so that I got caught in some sort of an explosion. Well, I came out black as the ink of spades and had to run across the stage and try to chase somebody where I was caught with that. And another time.
Excuse me, that was Granny when the stove blew up on her.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
when the stove
And
blew up,
the
I was
pipes from the
covered.
old stove were wrapped around your neck.
Yeah, and I'm chasing them out. And then another time was when he had me do Lucille Ball's, the one with drinking.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what's he do? But he goes to the drugstore and gets me this old crummy bottle that they had medicine in, and so I pretended to be drinking it. That I was supposed to keep, as I kept rehearsing it. He kept saying, "Now you got to rehearse it." And by the time I got done, I was supposed to be really drunk, and because I was supposed to be drinking it. I didn't really want to drink it because I didn't know what had been in that bottle. So, but yet I made believe. Finally, one night, you can't make believe. You got to drink it. Okay. So I sterilized it, and finally I drank it. And well, I should have put booze in it. Maybe I'd even done better. I don't know, but I didn't. And
That product was where you were supposedly touting was Vitamita Vegemin.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when she started out sober with Vitamita Vegemin, by the time she ended up half drunk with, you can imagine what Vitamita
what
Vegemin
Vitamin
would come out.
it was really.
Netta, tell us something, maybe some of the shows that might ring a bell with you.
Oh, God, I loved them all, but you have to be hammy, right?
Definitely, yeah.
You
yeah.
gotta be hammy.
You gotta be hammy,
And
yeah.
I just always wanted to be Minnie Pearl. And one skit we did, Leo was telling about, I went up to him, and Leo was telling about he was in this big problem because he was alone with his shotgun. He had only one shot, and he had a lion chasing him over here, and he had a bull chasing him over here, and he just didn't know what to do. So I just told him, I says, well, you just shoot the lion. Well, how do you know that? I said, well, you can shoot the bull anywhere.
Yeah.
And then I just went screaming, I'm just so proud to be here. That was not in the script. I wanted to be Minnie Pearl.
When we alternated with the shows from minstrel to musical
Musical
reviews, we would do excerpts from various Broadway
Oh,
musicals.
shows,
We
sure.
did Oklahoma, South Pacific,
Yep.
Pajama Game. One of the memorable ones, which required an awful lot of work, was we did excerpts from My Fair Lady. And Barbara McLaren and Carol Hubley paid the two leagues, and believe me, those two had a lot of lines to learn, even doing an excerpt.
Yeah,
And it was people like that. Dave Noah, when we did Fiddler on the Roof, Dave had a fine voice, and that was a difficult songs that his character sang in that show.
Very good.
Now, let's talk a little bit, Bruce, and I'll start once again with you. We started out in the Grange for up until 1980, and then we moved over to Pentucket. And I know you were in the early years with us. Talk a little bit about the Grange as a site to do a show.
Grange was the greatest place to perform because it was such a tight venue,
Yeah.
and the people were right up close. They could hear. You didn't have to be concerned about being near the mic to make your point. And we got away with murder up there. You could fall off that stage and no one would get hurt, and you could get back up. We had an event at the Grange where Bill Andrews, who was
The interlocutor.
the interlocutor, he was oftentimes the person that the N-men would direct back and forth. And one time, the prop guys had drilled a hole in the Grange floor, and they had shoved a pipe up into the leg of his pants, and there was a joke where they ultimately poured water, which looked to be right into his pants when it was going down into the hole, so to speak. Well, the kids that was sitting up front. That's where a lot of the kids sat. That was just the best night
That was a great
because
trip.
that clown was being made a monkey, so to speak.
That was funny.
Jimmy, now you were in shows not only at the Grange, but also at Pentucket. Compare the differences of working in both places.
Well, I want to say that the Pentucket, it was a great venue. It had very comfortable seats. It had all the proper staging, had sound equipment and everything else. But I really have to say, if I had a choice, I'd go back to the Grange because it had the charm of yesterday. The seats were terrible.
Yep.
I felt sorry for the audience when halfway through because they were not a comfortable seat whatsoever. If there wasn't a nail sticking up at somebody, because somebody would move
Yep.
over and say, "Well, there's a nail sticking up here, and I have to move over," or the back was broken out. But that was the Grange. That was part of it. We had a stairway that came upstairs, and unfortunately for people who had trouble climbing the stairs, it was difficult. And we were told that it was a fire hazard, but most of us guys were on the fire department. So that was something that we felt that we had covered. But the curtains didn't work. The lights would fail. The switch would not go off. The spotlight would be off. But that was the part that you could fill in and make things happen. You just seemed to know the character of the show, and you just proceeded with that. Many times I would forget my lines, and Wayne would say, "That's your line." I said, "I forgot it." And I would tell the audience, I said, "I forgot my line." And they would laugh, and it would just be just a horrific roar of audience. And Helen Noon, I used to call her my mother. I said, "Hi, Mom," because she would just be screaming
laughed.
all night long. If it wasn't for Helen, she was the battery that operated the laughter of the place, and everybody would pick up after it. It was just a wonderful time. I just absolutely love the Grange. As much as the Pentucket had the facility, if you will, for a show, the Grange had the charm of what we would like to say.
I think the Grange, we probably somewhere around 150, 175 people would, and I don't think we ever had less than that amount. We always squeezed in more people. And for those people out there who are used to going to theater, you have to understand that for the entire audience and the entire cast and the entire crew, there was only one John for everybody at the Grange.
And it was downstairs.
And it was downstairs.
Downstairs, yeah.
So, but moving over to Pentucket, like Jimmy said, we had better facilities. We ended up the last couple of years, they had sound equipment. We didn't need a microphone over there. And the girls could change in one room and the guys changed in another. It was completely different. But there was that charm about the Grange. Nettie, you talk about the difference between the Grange.
I have a wonderful story.
Go right ahead.
Nobody else has told
ahead.
it. Well, at the Grange, like we said, we just all loved it. And the stage was right there, and the audience was right there, and we were used to this stage. Now, when we went over to Pentucket, here we've got this big rounded stage like this. When none of us were used to it. And I'll never forget when Terry Chase was singing her song. Oh, yeah. The lights are out, the spotlight's on her, and she went over here and went right off the stage.
Yeah. The stage curved.
It curved, and we weren't used to it.
She
was
wasn't
used to the
looking where
straight
she
one.
going, and she missed a step.
And I thought it's because she wasn't used to a curved stage. So I'll just never forget that.
Terry was one of those who just showed up every year, and she had a great voice.
Yeah, and
she
loved
could do wonders with a song.
Yeah.
Thelma, give me your version of the difference between the two places.
Well, to me, it was really a big difference because I'm a scaredy cat. And I'd be upstairs looking out the window. How far down is there if there's a fire? Can I jump and make it all right? And I kind of had my window picked out in case something happened. But we never did. There was always a fireman on duty. Remember the fireman on duty?
If I could interject, the firemen, those who are not in the show or connected with the show, there was always several volunteers who would be walking around downstairs and up the back of the hall to make sure that safety was a prime issue. Go ahead, Thelma.
And the other thing is when we'd start in the spring, so because we always started in April, and the Grange wasn't hit very well. So the guys would all come in and start the furnace going. Well, sometimes when they stop that furnace going, we'd be starting our first rehearsals.
That was in February.
Oh my God, the oils from there would be smelling something wicked, and you'd think, oh, is that furnace going to keep going to get us through to all the rehearsals? Remember that part of it, and also as he said, the changing rooms and the bathrooms. You went before you came because you didn't want to take a chance of going again because you would never get in there. So you made sure you did your duty before you came there.
You know, Leo, speaking of the changing rooms, I can remember one of the skits I had the pink tights on and the big heart and my bow and arrow as Cupid, and prior to that I had another skit, and you get sweaty, and it wasn't easy coming out of one outfit and going into another. And I can remember one time getting my pink tights on in front of everybody because there was no changing rooms.
Right.
So you kind of did your things and paid attention to what you were supposed to be doing. But they had such a trouble getting my pink tights on. I had 3 women working on me one night, and I said, "I love this new changing room. This is wonderful."
Turn the heat up.
Turn the heat up. You don't need
that's
to. But that was one of the things that the Grange didn't provide, and yet everything took place. I mean, everything worked. There was the girls would be changing maybe behind a curtain or something, but you didn't have that much time to make that change. So I just thought it was Patty, it was Beanie Brooks, and there was another woman. I said, "This is fantastic. I never had pantyhose on before, but if it takes 3 women to put them on,
Hey, stupid
I'm all
Cupid,
for
huh?
it."
Yeah,
they
right.
call me "Hey Stupid," but I really wasn't.
Yeah, right.
Well, we've mentioned like the interlocutors, and you mentioned Wayne Brooks, but we started originally with. Anybody remember the first interlocutor that we started with?
I thought it was
Don
Bill
Selby?
Andrews.
No, Bill Andrews wasn't in my
Oh,
show.
I'm sorry. So was
With
it
my
John
show.
Gilchrist?
John Gilchrist.
Oh,
Gilchrist.
John,
Johnny
yeah.
Gilchrist,
Yeah.
sure.
John
Yeah.
Gilchrist, and John had a way about him. John didn't mind if people made fun of him.
No,
And
not
John,
at all.
if they laughed at him, that was fine.
Yep.
John, when we honored him one year, one of the barbershop quartets said that he had the inane property of being able to constantly mispronounce our names. But the interlocutors, after John passed on, was Wayne Bridges. Wayne did it for a long time till he retired.
Yep.
And then
Brooks, I believe.
we had
Brookie.
after
Wayne,
Brooks,
okay,
after
Brookie.
Wayne,
Wayne.
was oh goodness sakes, I'm having a senior moment here. He was in the show for years. His daughter was in the show. I'll think of that name afterwards. And I finally did the last year doing the interlocutor. But let's talk about, we were blessed over all these years.
we were.
We don't have an orchestra, but we were blessed with good piano players. Bruce, you talk a little bit about Liz Quimby.
Liz
Oh,
Quimby.
Liz. Liz just loved
Liz
it.
Quimby
very
could adapt to any one of us that was in the cast. And she was very dependable. If she was going to start you off in the key of C, and she was going to give you a little introduction, it was the same each night. And if she knew you couldn't reach the higher note, she'd adapt.
Oh, she was
And she
wonderful.
was very dependable and had a good spirit and made it fun.
Yeah, she could slow down and pick up the tempo if the singer was somewhat slower that night or a little bit off. She would
She
fall
followed
right in
us.
through it and made you look good. Speaking of looking good, I remember one time that Leo had asked me, in all the years that we were there, he never asked me to sing. And I remember one time he asked me to sing a song which was out behind the barn, and I don't really remember lines or songs very well. So I practiced and practiced and practiced, but I remember very vividly that after singing that one song, he never asked me again to sing another song in the minstrel show. But I had a part in the minstrel show.
I think the directors had a knack for determining what the talent was and the ability that you brought. One night I filled in one of my dad's shows as an end man because the person couldn't make it. So my father gave me 3 jokes to tell. That would be my song. And I never sang. I can't remember but just one time when I I sang, and that must have been another emergency.
No, I take issue with that. You were an man in one of my shows, and you did a great job on walking my baby back home.
Oh,
I
yes, you
remember
did,
that,
yes, you
walking
did.
my baby
Thank
back
you.
home.
You and my mother loved it.
And I finally remember that other interlocutor was Phil Cosgrove.
Oh, Phil.
Phil
that's
Cosgrove.
good.
Oh.
Phil had a great voice,
Oh,
and he did
in-man too.
he worked hard at being the interlocutor, which was a difficult job. So, ladies, you tell me something about after Liz, we had Carol Drescher. Carol
Yeah,
was a
Carol.
great
Yeah.
piano player. Talk a little bit about Carol.
Oh, I just remembered Liz more than anybody.
You do.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I really did.
Well, Carol actually played for me more years than Liz
Than
did.
Liz did,
Yeah.
yeah.
And Carol was the same way as what Jimmy alluded to.
She really accompanied
She could change a
Yeah.
key, and songs
Yeah.
are written for people with big ranges.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Amateurs like us don't
Yeah, no,
have
no.
the range, and
But
she
nobody,
could,
nobody told us that we were amateurs.
she could change the key almost instantly, and that was a gift.
That was a gift.
Or something she worked at,
Yeah.
or maybe a combination. But one year we had a young girl after Carol passed away, and her name was Virginia Beale. And she played just 1 year, and the poor girl, she was a good piano player, but we asked
Yeah.
a lot of them,
Yeah.
a lot, and
had no
she worked
idea.
very hard. And then after Virginia Beale came Lynn Wilby, and Lil, you gentlemen, I don't think were in the shows with her. You two
Yep,
were,
yep.
and she was a prize also.
Yep, yep.
She was a very accomplished player, but she was very accommodating too, and that working with Leo Jubert was not the easiest thing in the world.
I don't know. We
Well,
had
that-
no problem.
I threw that out there so you guys would say that.
But you talk about that, the hazards of being in the minstrel show. I can remember one time that I had to wear a grass skirt in coconuts. Well, there were rehearsals, and I didn't have to really wear the coconuts often, other than the show itself. And after the show, there was a couple of days later, I was taking my shirt off at home, and my wife said, "What's that on your above here?" And I said, "Those are Band-Aids." And she says, "What are the Band-Aids from?" I says, "You wear coconuts for 2 nights, and you realize you get a kind of a rash." So, so there was a point of the hazards of working in the show, but it to me it was just I would do it over and over and over again. That was just so much fun. But the Band-Aids, it wasn't a training bar. It was merely a coconut rash.
Actually, I don't think that was from a minstrel show. It was when we did excerpts from South Pacific.
South Pacific,
South
yes.
And
yeah.
and Honey Bun was the name
Yeah.
of the song
Uh-huh.
in which you
Honey Bun.
came out. And I want to get to some of the, going back to some of the performers. One person who was, I considered one of the 4 or 5 talented people who unfortunately was only in a couple of shows, and that was Jane Purley.
Oh,
Does anybody
yes,
ever remember
yes.
Jane Purley?
Absolutely, yeah.
But she was in
Yeah,
South
nice.
Pacific.
Very
She
good.
played the lead
Wonderful voice.
female.
Wonderful.
She not only had a wonderful voice,
lines.
She acted
she
great.
could act
Yeah.
and she could dance. She could do
Yes.
everything you asked of her,
Yeah.
and she was superb when she did South Pacific,
South Pacific
especially.
was
And she
awesome.
was an N person
Yeah.
too. She
Yeah,
was
she
an N
was just
person.
great.
That was a great
Really.
show.
The first year I did the show, Bruce, your brother, was the drummer.
Yes, Wayne.
Wayne, and we had for a couple of years we had a young man by the name of Scott Thompson,
Yes.
and then what was the older gentleman?
Steve True.
Steve
He
True
don't like
did
to be
most of
called
it.
the
Don't
older.
forget Steve Drew.
Yeah, no, there was one other gentleman in there. I had mentioned him earlier. Jack Shepard. Jack
Yeah,
Shepard.
Shepard,
Sure.
We used to have orchestras in this
Yes,
area,
yes.
dance
Yes, he did.
bands,
Yes, he
and he played for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And I'll never forget. He interjected. He had a little whistle, and we were doing the song "Alabama Bound," and at the appropriate time, he blew
blow the
like a
whistle,
train
like
whistle.
a train whistle, yes.
Bruce, I'm starting out with you once again. Behind the scenes, most people don't pay attention to, but anybody that's been in a show knows that those people who are not on stage, if it wasn't for them, you wouldn't have a show.
wouldn't
Talk
have
a
a
little bit about
That's so right. When you think of the costumes that Jimmy talked about, the things that we needed. We did tambourine routines with the shiny material that when a black light came on it, it just made the
glowed.
people in the audience
Yep.
just ooh and ah. And getting those out to the end men, the gauntlets and what have you, all of this had to be made the best.
Yep.
And Mary Morgan and some of her people, I know
Right,
Linda
sure.
Marshall Stewart does.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Sandy Smith, Leon's wife.
Yep.
There were a lot of people out there getting that part of it done. My
Jackie
mother-
Stark
Jackie
helped out
too,
with
sure.
costumes
Yeah.
for
Oh,
years.
yes.
And getting the performers out and ready so that they were right in the wing, that was a job that my mother did for quite a few years for my father, and they seemed to work very well together. But Leo and I know my dad always said that the core of our shows was the people out back and the chorus.
Right.
Oh, the
There
chorus.
was lighting, there was makeup, props. We had every year somebody like June Whitcomb and Mary Morgan. We had coffee at the when we
Yes.
take a break from rehearsing, and that came in handy, I'll tell you. But it would be scenery, for instance, scenery. The
Yes.
Perkins family,
Yeah.
even Laura Mailman and her husband Bud, they helped out with scenery.
Did Dave
Jimmy
Shaw do
Hume and
some?
his wife, my son Danny. You're an artist, Jim, and you know painting scenery at the Grange when your hands are freezing in the cold up there is not the easiest thing to
It's a
do.
little
Well, just
blurry.
the space that was available to us at the Grange was so limited that, but everything took place. I mean, they got the backdrops out, they got
Yep.
the props out on time, and without them, it really couldn't have worked because we depended on them so much. We didn't ask them to do it. They knew what to do, when
And
to
they
do it,
did
and
it.
how to do it,
was
and
awesome.
it was done one time.
Yeah.
That tambourine routine, I mean, most people could really figure it out where that tambourine is supposed to be, under the leg or over the leg. And Leo would often say, Jim, it's under the leg at this speed. And I says, Leo, I was tuning the tambourine. And he said,
Yeah,
you
right.
don't tune tambourines. So I didn't really have much of an excuse on that, on the tambourine routine.
A few years too, we spread out all of the scenery things upstairs, and when the old senior center closed, with the upstairs was vacant, and we would go upstairs, and of course there was no heat up there
No,
at all.
no.
And we had the canvases all spread out on the floor, and we're trying to get them all painted and everything to get up for the backdrop,
Yeah,
for
awesome.
the scenery. A couple of years we did that.
Yep.
It was fun.
Well, I know one thing, and I'll let you people jump in if you want. I know that the first year I was approached was by Merrill Smith and his son Leon. Bruce, your dad, was his doctor's advice told him that he had to stop doing this, and so they asked me to do it. And I will say that talking about the Santa Committee, that I don't think there was a year go by that Merrill was supposedly unvoted head of that committee.
Right.
He would ask me every year, is there anything you need?
Yes.
Is there anything you need? So maybe you people can jump in with, the sponsorship and the support of the
Well,
Santa Committee.
with Merrill, he had a cane, and you wanted to stay out of reach of the cane because he used the cane quite frequently. And I can remember being back home in Merrimack here, and the phone would ring, and Pat would grab the phone and hold the receiver and say, "It's Merrill." And I say, "I'm not here. I'm not here." She said, "Here, you take it." So Merrill said, "What are you doing?" And that would be kind of a gruff voice. "What are you doing?" And I said, "I was gonna get down here." He said, "We got to do something." So we'd be down in the cellar, and he would sit there, and Merrill was probably a robust man and maybe close to 6 foot tall, and he had a 3 foot cane, but he could reach out 10 feet. Because if you weren't doing something right, he'd whack you with it and say, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
I was going to go do this and go do that. He got things done. I mean, he was just an amazing guy. I know he had trouble with his legs, not being crippled, but some
Probably
problems with his
arthritis.
leg, arthritis, whatever. So he always sat in the chair, and whenever we had a meeting, like at our house or Peavy's house or the fire station, you would want to stay away from that cane because he got you to pay attention to what he wanted and when he wanted it. But he worked out very well, and he's a great guy.
Merrill Smith was instrumental in getting the signs up at the Little League field, getting the grass cut at the cemeteries,
Yeah.
and Leon Smith was right there doing it all.
Yeah.
The things that went on behind the scenes in Merrimack that Merrill said he'd do, he got the right people to get it done, and I know I'm grateful for the things that went on during my years here.
He may have been rough and gruff, but he was a diamond in the rough.
Yes,
He
was.
cared very much about the committee and what we're doing. It was because when you're in a small town, I think it's very, very much different than in a bigger city or whatever. In a small town, you seem to know everybody. Everybody seems to know you, but there's
That's
a
true.
camaraderie that you expect to. You want to do something for your neighbor. You want to do something for somebody else, and that's the way it was. It was just an internal warmth, comfortable feeling as part of the family. It was a family.
So
I was gonna say that too, about the cast over all the years. I mean, you'd
Oh,
go.
the after party cast?
Uh-huh.
Oh, don't talk about that. We can't talk.
The after
No,
party.
don't talk
No,
about that.
but I mean, I
About
think
the
that's
dice.
what you had was a feeling of family.
Yeah.
Like, you'd go along through the winter and all of a sudden show rehearsals are gonna start and it's February. And you get back and see all these people, you haven't seen a lot of them. And it was just like a family feeling, and I think that made such a difference with the crew.
Yeah, it did.
I mean, you really did have a family feeling. I loved it.
Thelma, you're still on the Santa Committee to this day, so
I am. I'm still on it, but it just isn't the same. The show, Leo, and the people were the
Yeah.
backbone of the Santa Committee and everything that goes on in the town for the Christmas parade.
Yeah.
That was the backbone of the parade, and we never could find another director like Leo.
No, they didn't
No
want
matter how hard we tried one year,
Didn't work.
and it didn't work. She came and she said, well, what do you want to sing tonight? You don't do that. Leah would come, you're singing this tonight, or you're doing this. And there was
We
no
had
questions
direction.
asked,
There were
nothing.
your butts.
But you can't, that's the only way you can run anything, and he ran a good, tight ship, and it was a wonderful, wonderful experience for me. I made so many friendships through it,
Yep.
and as Netta says, it was family.
family.
And when February came around the next year,
Oh.
what are we gonna do today? We can't go to rehearsal tonight. Well, you know, we was just at loss for the first year. We missed
Yeah.
it so
Oh,
much.
I still have people asking
Yeah,
me.
and
They
people
miss
have
it.
asked about the show
Yeah.
because he brought such talent to
And
Merrimack.
happiness, people
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We
Well, I
had
think
a
the
great
thing
time.
too with you, Leo, and I say this because I was a difficult because of my ability or inability to read as easy or remember lines. I was not really good at remembering lines, and Leo would give me the skits and stuff. So, but backing up to Leo, he dealt with a lot of individual people at different levels where they were, and there would be times that anybody would not be happy about something, and Leo sort of juggled that whole concept of
Yeah.
I have to handle him or can handle her differently, and I have to be a little bit tactful about this and tactful about that, but somehow he managed to keep that as a unit, and it wasn't a fragmented unit. It wasn't. Everybody helped everybody else, but
Yeah.
you went to Leo to say, I'm having trouble with this. Can you get me somebody that can help me with this or that? And I think that's I take my hat off to you, Leo, with that. It
Yeah.
was very, very difficult because you were handling a lot of individual people at different levels of their life and time. And,
Oh, yeah.
and I mean, I hated Sunday nights because I had to go to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be sitting there. I said, I can't learn these lines. I don't know the music. Everybody's singing the same words, but I'm singing something different. But that was me, and he had to deal with that. And I take my hat off and I say thank you very much. I may not have said thank you at the times, but I want to say thank you very much for doing what you did for the town of Merrimack and for me too.
Yeah,
I
same
agree.
here,
I
yeah.
agree. He
Well,
was
I-
dealing with volunteers that meant well, but maybe didn't have the tools in their toolbox.
Right,
But he
right.
made the tools that they had work.
Yes, he
I congratulate
I
you too.
appreciate those kind words because all of you have missed the one reason that I did it. It was the only chance I'd ever get to sing a solo. But I'd like to end up here. I did 35 years of that show, and maybe each one of you has a memorable moment of something, or one show, or an incident, a rehearsal incident. Bruce, what was a memorable moment to you?
Well, I always loved what Jim did. And I remember one time Netta Starboard and Patty Smith and Alberta Peavy were Girl Scout leaders, and they had probably 8 or 10 girls that were in the Girl Scouts singing a lollipop song dressed up to complement the lyrics with the lollipops that maybe Jimmy made. And it was just heartwarming to see these young girls at that time performing. And then later on, some of them stayed in Merrimack and got involved in the
adults.
show. Yes, it was wonderful.
Jim, what was a memorable?
Well, it was memorable, but it was embarrassing. Obviously, we had a big spotlight in the front, and there was one skit that I had on. I had a very thin pair of baggy pants on, and when the spotlight went on, the entire chorus is like, everybody said, "Don't say anything, don't say a word," and I felt there was a hush went over the back. And when I got home, I said to Pat, I said, my wife, I said, "What was that all about?" And she said, "I'm glad you had underwear on." She said, "Because you could see right through those pants from the spotlight." She said, "Everybody's going, oh my God, oh my God." It was funny, but those are the things that we just had so much fun. The tights with 3 girls putting the pants on, just the bunch of lemons are always all over the place because all the singers had to have squeezing lemons to clear their voice and such. And I just thought they were to eat, so you peel them back and you'd be eating. And they said, "No, Jimmy, you're supposed to squirt it in your mouth." I said, "Well, I'm not singing. I'm going to just eat for a while." But that was the fun of the Grange. It was just the Grange was my home. That's I mean, I love the other place because we did the show, but the Grange, you just can't, you can never put together the memories and the chairs that were broken and why people would get out of a chair and move over 2 or 3 or try 2 or 3 and finally sit over here and say, "Why aren't they sitting there?" And there'd be tacks sticking up but that was the Grange. That's what made the place. The lights didn't work. The one bathroom, I wish I could have tickets to the bathroom because I could have made a fortune. We should have made more money going to the bathroom than we did the
Coin
show.
operated.
Yeah.
Netta, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, Bruce just triggered it because when I had the kids in the show, thanks to you, then we did a song from, we did Do Re Mi from The Sound of Music.
Yes.
And even today, my 2 kids just say, "Ma, you got us onto that big stage." So, I mean, that was very memorable to have the kids and watch their mother be funny.
So, Thelma, what sticks out in your mind?
Well, I think, of course, naturally, it's the comedy skits, because, as I said before, I hadn't got a note in my head. But I did like to do comedy. And one of the very last shows of all we did, can they see?
I don't know if they can see that or
it
not.
But the last show, we got Leo. And it
Pie
was
in the face.
The pie in the face. But it miscued, and it got both of us in the face. I got it, and we both, somehow our timing was a little bit off, and we both got it in the face. And that was the last show. I don't know if that's because why he pulled out or not, but anyways, that was one of the last ones. And he really got it in the face good, and so did I. And
That's
was
funny.
every skit was fun.
The end of the show, we would meet at someone's house, and it was almost like a sad time. It was like,
Yes.
we always complained about we had to rehearse, we had to do this and this and that. And after the last Sunday night, we all went to someone's house and we had the party.
Yep.
It was almost like a somber moment that you said, it's over. And
Yeah, I know.
it's a sad thing. We reminisce, we joke, we laugh, and we have a great time, and the party finally dissolves, and you go your own way, and it's another year. But it's almost like a sad time, but yet it was, as much as we complained, we didn't really want it to end, because
Yes.
Sunday night was it, and Leo would say, great job, guys, we made it, let's go to the party. And it was fun, but it's over. It was a sad thing,
Yeah,
and I can
it was.
see where people that are in shows and Broadway and things like that, there is a sense of family, and now you're going to lose that family.
Yeah.
And you'll see people during the year, but it was that unit of the family of the show, of Leo. It was dispersed, and it was over for another year, and you couldn't wait to start rehearsals again so you could start complaining.
Well, I'm going to end up with the fact that whatever we've talked about, whatever subjects, we have probably left out somebody's name.
Yes.
You know, we had people start out, young girls. Kathy Powell started out around 12 years old, and now she's a Kathy Peavy,
Yep.
and she was in it all those years. People behind the scenes, the Perkinsons. Walton and Nancy Perkins helped out behind the scenes, and we've left out somebody, and I
Oh, I'm
apologize
sure
to
we
them,
have, yeah.
not meaning to, but I hope we brought a few memories to you people, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.